The morning I found Jack Brennan, he was more ghost than man.
Your guns are gone.
Blood had painted
Your horse is
abstract
dead.
patterns across the alkali flats, each drop telling a story of miles traveled on willpower alone. The buzzards had already begun their patient circles overhead, and if I hadn't been tracking a wounded elk through that god-forsaken stretch of desert, Jack Brennan would have become just another set of bones bleaching under the Arizona sun. But fate, as my grandmother used to say, weaves its threads in ways we cannot see until the pattern is complete. I am Ayanna Medicine Woman of the White Mountain Apache, and I should have let him die. This man, this broken creature gasping for water, through cracked lips, wore the distinctive silver spurs of a bounty hunter, the kind who had torn families apart for $30 a head. The kind who had dragged our young men to reservations they would never leave. The kind who had hunted my people like animals for sport and profit. "Water," he croaked, though I doubt he knew he was speaking. His eyes had rolled back, showing only white like a horse gone mad with thirst. I stood there for a long moment, my water gourd heavy in my hands. The desert wind whispered through the sage, carrying the scent of death and something else. Destiny, perhaps, though I wouldn't understand that until much later. Around his neck, barely visible through the dirt and blood, hung a small silver locket. It had fallen open, revealing the photograph of a woman and child, both long dead, by the look of the aged paper. That locket changed everything, not because of what it contained, but because of what it meant. Even monsters, I realized, had once been men who loved and were loved in return. The journey back to our camp took 3 days. 3 days of dragging him on a makeshift travois, stopping every hour to force water between his lips to pack his wounds with desert herbs that my mother had taught me to use. 3 days of questioning my own sanity. When the fever took him on the second night, he spoke names in his delirium. Margaret and little James, over and over, like a prayer to gods who had long stopped listening. Why, my brother Samuel asked when he met me at the canyon's mouth, seeing what I dragged behind my horse. Why would you save him? I couldn't answer then. How could I explain the voice I'd heard on the wind? How could I tell him about the vision I'd had 3 nights before? A white eagle with broken wings falling from the sky, transforming into a man at the moment it touched the earth. When Jack Brennan finally opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by 50 Apache warriors, each one carrying a rifle, each one with plenty of reason to want him dead. The medicine lodge where he lay was filled with smoke from burning sage and cedar, the air thick with the weight of unspoken judgment. He tried to reach for where his gun should have been, but his hand found only bandages and the strange softness of a woven blanket. "Your guns are gone," I told him in English, watching his eyes focus on me with the intensity of a trapped animal. "Your horse is dead. Your friends, if you had any, are 100 miles away. You are alive only because I decided you should be, though most here question that decision." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw recognition dawn in his eyes, not of me personally, but of what I was, an Apache woman, the very type he had hunted. His throat worked trying to form words, but only a harsh whisper emerged. "You should have let me die." Yes, I agreed, surprising him with my honesty. "I should have, but death was too eager to claim you, and I have never liked giving death what it wants too easily." The warriors behind me shifted restlessly. Many of them had lost family to bounty hunters. Thomas Crow Dog's son had been taken just last winter, sold to the reservation authorities for the price of a good horse. Maria Sunrise's husband had been shot in the back while trying to protect their children from capture. Each person in that lodge had a story, a scar, a reason to want this man's blood. "Do you know who I am?" Jack finally asked, his voice gaining strength. "Jack Brennan, the wolf hunter they call you, though you hunt more than wolves." I moved closer, letting him see the knowledge in my eyes. "You took my brother's friend, Robert Two Feathers, 3 summers ago. You dragged him to Fort Grant in chains." His face went pale beneath the desert tan. I was just following the law I finished for him. Doing your job. Feeding your family. I shook my head. Those are the words of a man who has never had to watch his children starve because strangers decided his land was no longer his. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of history of crimes that could never be fully forgiven, only transformed into something else. Something that might, if the spirits were willing, resemble redemption. "Why save me then?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. I held up the silver locket I had taken from his neck, because even wolves mourn their dead, and because 3 nights ago the spirits showed me a vision. A white eagle falling from the sky, its wings broken, transforming into a man at the moment of impact. That man would either bring destruction to my people or become their unlikely protector. The choice, the spirits said, would be mine. Jack Brennan closed his eyes, and I saw tears escape from beneath his lashes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The hardness was still there, but cracked like sun-baked earth after the first drops of rain. "Your brother," he said quietly. "The one whose friend I took. Is he here?" I nodded toward the entrance of the lodge. Shadowhawk stands outside. He holds your life in his hands, as is his right by our law, but he waits for my word. And what word will you give? I studied this broken man, this wolf without teeth, this eagle with shattered wings. In his eyes, I saw my own reflection, someone who had lost everything and survived anyway. Someone who had learned that sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to a person is let them live with their choices. That remains to be seen, Jack Brennan. That remains to be seen. The Arizona Territory in 1882 was no place for the weak or the merciful. It was a land where the sun could kill you as surely as a bullet, where water was worth more than gold, and where the line between civilization and savagery was drawn in sand that shifted with every wind. I had lived here all my life, 28 winters among the White Mountain Apache, learning the medicine ways from my grandmother before the soldiers came and changed everything. Jack Brennan had lived here for 15 years, though lived might be too gentle a word. He had survived here, thrived here in the way a scorpion thrives, by being more dangerous than anything that might threaten him. As he recovered in our camp over those first days, I learned his story in fragments, pieces of truth that fell from his lips like drops of blood from a wound that wouldn't heal. "Started hunting wolves when I was 19, he told me one evening, his voice rough as sandpaper. Real wolves, the 4-legged kind. Ranchers paid good money for their pelts, better money for keeping them away from cattle. He was sitting up by then, though still too weak to walk far. The other members of my tribe gave him wide berth, like he was a rattlesnake that might strike even without its fangs. Only I and old Martha Goodwater, who had lost her fear of death decades ago, would tend to him. When did you start hunting the 2-legged kind? I asked, grinding juniper berries for a poultice. His jaw tightened. When the real wolves got scarce. When the army started paying better. When I stopped seeing the difference. There's always a difference, Jack Brennan. Not when you've buried your wife and boy, he said, and the words came out like they'd been ripped from his chest. Not when Comanches rode through your homestead and left nothing but ashes and screams you still hear at night. I stopped grinding, looking at him directly. And so, you became what you hated. You became the one who creates ashes and screams. He met my gaze, and I saw a flicker of the man he might have been before loss carved him into something sharp and merciless. I became what the territory needed, what the law required. The white man's law, I corrected. The law that says my people can be hunted like animals, that our children can be stolen and sold, that our sacred lands can be taken because someone in Washington drew lines on a map. Your people killed my family, he said, though there was less venom in it than exhaustion. Comanches killed your family, I replied. I am Apache. We are not the same any more than you are the same as the Spanish who enslaved my grandmother's grandmother, or the Mexicans who put bounties on Apache scalps. Men, women, and children, 100 pesos each. The silence that followed was filled with the sound of distant drums. My people were preparing for the moon dance, a ceremony of renewal that came every autumn. Jack listened to the rhythm, and I could see him trying to categorize it: threat or celebration, danger or beauty. That was what he had become, a man who could only see the world in terms of hunter and prey. "Tell me about them," I said suddenly. "Your wife and son." The request surprised him. His hand went instinctively to where the locket should have been finding only his chest. I reached into my medicine bag and pulled out the silver locket, handing it to him. He took it with trembling fingers, opening it to stare at the faded photograph within. "Margaret," he said softly. She had hair like corn silk and a laugh that could make you forget there was evil in the world. Met her in St. Louis, convinced her to come west with promises of land and freedom. She believed me. His voice cracked. She believed in me. And your son, James. We called him Little Jim, though he hated it. Said it made him sound like a baby. A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. He was 7 when it happened, just learning to ride. Had his mother's gentle nature and my stubborn streak. Would have been 22 now, probably with a family of his own. I watched as tears rolled down his cheeks, not bothering to hide them. This was good. A man who could still weep, could still heal. "I had a husband once," I said, surprising myself with the admission. "David Redhorse. He was taken by the soldier's sickness, what you call smallpox, along with our 2 children, a daughter who would be 6 now, a son who would be 4. Jack looked at me with new understanding. "The reservation. Fort Apache. They promised food and medicine if we came in peacefully. The food was rotten meat that made us sick. The medicine never came. The blankets they gave us carried disease." I resumed grinding the juniper, needing something to do with my hands. I survived. I don't know why. Perhaps to be here now, in this moment, having this conversation with the man who might have been the one to drag my husband there had he lived long enough to resist. "Jesus Christ," Jack whispered. "Your Jesus has little power here," I said. "This is the land of Spider Grandmother and White Painted Woman." Though I suspect all gods weep the same tears when they see what their children do to each other. Over the following days, as Jack grew stronger, I showed him our world, not as an outsider looking in, but as someone who might need to understand it to survive. Our camp was small, maybe 200 souls, who had refused to go to the reservation, who lived in the old way, moving with the seasons, following the deer and the rains. "This is Samuel, my brother," I said, introducing him to the man who had wanted to kill him on sight. Samuel stood tall, his face painted for war, his rifle held casually but ready. "He leads our warriors." "Shadow Hawk," Jack said, recognition dawning. "You're Shadow Hawk. I've seen your wanted poster, $500 bounty." Samuel smiled, but it was all teeth and no warmth. "Only 500, I'm insulted. Your scalp would bring me nothing but satisfaction worth more than any white man's gold." "Samuel," I warned. "He should know where he stands, sister. He is alive because you wish it. But my mercy has limits." Jack nodded slowly. "Fair enough." As we walked through the camp, I introduced him to others. Maria Sunrise, whose husband he might have hunted. Thomas Crow Dog, whose son was taken. Each meeting was tense, charged with the potential for violence, but also with curiosity. Why had I saved him? What did the spirits intend? "You're taking a hell of a risk," Jack said as we stood at the edge of camp, looking out at the desert that stretched endlessly before us. "Your people want me dead." "My people want justice," I corrected. "Death is not always justice. Sometimes living with your choices is harder punishment than dying for them." "And what about you? What do you want?" I considered the question watching an eagle circle overhead. I want to understand why the spirits sent me that vision, why they chose you of all people to fall at my feet. I want to know if a man can change, truly change, not just wear a different face. And if I can't, then my brother will get his satisfaction, and the desert will have one more set of bones to bleach. Jack was quiet for a moment, then said, "Your English is excellent. Where did you learn?" "The mission school before I escaped. They tried to beat the Apache out of us, make us white in all but skin. They cut our hair, forbade our language, told us our gods were devils." I touched the medicine bag at my waist. "But you cannot kill a people's spirit by changing their clothes or their words. We endure. We adapt. We survive. Like you're helping me survive. Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm helping you die more slowly with more meaning." I turned to face him fully. "Tell me, Jack Brennan, what do you have to live for now? Your family is gone. Your profession here is ended. My people will never let you hunt again. You are a man without a tribe, without a purpose. So I ask you, why should you continue to breathe?" He was quiet for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible, "I don't know." "Good," I said. "A man who doesn't know has the chance to learn. A man who thinks he knows everything is already dead. He just hasn't stopped moving yet." That night, as the moon dance began, I watched Jack from across the fire. He sat alone, isolated, watching our people move in the ancient patterns that told the story of creation, of loss, of renewal. His face was a map of conflicting emotions: fear, wonder, longing, guilt. This was the man I had saved. Not a monster, not a hero, but something more complex and more human. A broken soul seeking redemption in a land that had already taken everything from him. Whether he would find it, or whether it would destroy him, remained to be seen. The drums beat on, and the dancers whirled, and somewhere in the smoke and shadows, I thought I saw the white eagle from my vision, its wings slowly beginning to heal. The past is a hunter that never tires, never rests, never shows mercy. It tracks you through the years, following your scent, across deserts and mountains, through towns and territories, always just one sunset behind. Jack Brennan knew this better than most, and on his 7th night in our camp, the past finally caught up with him in the form of a nightmare that woke half the tribe. Margaret, get to the root cellar, take Jimmy, and... His screams cut through the desert night like a blade. I found him thrashing in his blankets, eyes wide, but seeing nothing except memories painted in blood and flame. When I touched his shoulder, he grabbed my wrist with the desperate strength of a drowning man. "They're burning everything," he gasped. "I can smell it. Sweet Jesus, I can smell the smoke, and—" "You're safe," I said, firmly pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "It's memory smoke, Jack. Old smoke. It cannot hurt you now." But we both knew that was a lie. Memory smoke burns longer and deeper than any real fire. As he calmed, breathing still ragged, he began to speak. Not to me exactly, but to the darkness, to the ghosts that inhabited it. "It was my fault. All of it. I should have been there." "Tell me," I said, settling beside him with the patience my grandmother had taught me. Sometimes the only way to heal a wound is to let all the poison out first. "I was in Tucson," he began, his voice hollow. "Delivering 2 prisoners, collecting bounty money. Thought I was providing for my family, making our life better. Margaret begged me not to go. Said she had a bad feeling. Women's intuition, she called it." He laughed bitterly. "I told her she was being foolish. Told her Tom Morrison from the next ranch would check on them, that nothing ever happened in our valley. Too small, too insignificant for anyone to bother with." He was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear the drums from a distant ceremony, someone else's ritual for keeping their own ghosts at bay. The Comanche war party hit 3 ranches that day. Morrison's first, found his whole family dead. Then the Luther's place. By the time I got home riding hard for 2 days straight, after hearing the news, there was nothing left but charred timber and 2 graves the neighbors had dug. You didn't see them die, I said. It wasn't a question. No. That's the hell of it. My mind fills in the details, creates 1,000 different versions of their last moments. Sometimes Margaret fights them off long enough for Jimmy to escape. Sometimes Jimmy stands in front of his mother with the little rifle I'd been teaching him to shoot. Sometimes they die quick. Sometimes. He couldn't finish. The not knowing is worse than knowing, I said. Trust me in this. Jack looked at me, then really looked at me. Your family. You were there. I nodded, my own memories rising like dust devils in my mind. The soldiers came at dawn, said we had to come to the fort, that it was for our own protection. My husband David, he believed them. He had learned their language, thought we could live in both worlds. I paused, gathering the strength to continue. Our daughter Morning Star was coughing by the third day at the fort. Just a little cough, the soldiers said. Nothing to worry about. By the 5th day, she was burning with fever. By the 7th, she was gone. Christ, Jack whispered. My son Little Wolf lasted 2 more days. He was stronger, fought harder. I held him as he died, sang him the old songs even though the missionaries forbade it. David followed them 3 days later. He simply stopped breathing as if he chose to follow our children rather than live without them. But you survived. My body survived. For months, I was like you when I found you, more ghost than woman. I wanted to follow them, tried to follow them. Samuel stopped me, brought me back to the old ways, to our people who had refused the reservation. He saved me, though. For a long time, I hated him for it. Jack was studying me with an intensity that would have been uncomfortable if I hadn't recognized it. He was seeing me not as his captor or his savior, but as someone who had walked the same dark path he was walking. How do you live with it? He asked. The guilt, the knowing that if you'd made different choices, you don't live with it. You live despite it. Every sunrise is a choice to keep breathing when stopping would be easier. Every small kindness you show, every moment of beauty you allow yourself to see. These are acts of rebellion against the darkness that wants to swallow you. I reached into my medicine bag and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in deerskin. Inside were 3 items: a tiny moccasin that would have fit in the palm of my hand, a carved wooden horse no bigger than my thumb, and a silver ring, worn thin with age. These are all I have left of them, I said. Some days they feel like anchors drowning me. Other days they're reasons to keep going, to honor their memory by living the life they cannot. Jack pulled out his locket, opening it to show me the photograph again. In the flickering firelight, I could see the details better. Margaret's kind eyes, the boy's gap-toothed grin. Jimmy was afraid of the dark, Jack said suddenly. Used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms. I'd get frustrated, tell him he needed to be brave to be a big boy. His voice cracked. I'd give anything to have him crawl into bed with me now, to tell him it's okay to be afraid, that being afraid doesn't make you weak. My daughter loved to dance, I offered in return. Even before she could walk properly, she would move to any rhythm. Drums rain on the roof, even the sound of grinding corn. The missionaries at the fort told her dancing was savage, sinful. She stopped dancing. I think that's when the sickness found her, when she stopped being who she was meant to be. We sat in shared silence, 2 people who had lost everything, finding strange comfort in the company of someone who should have been an enemy. The night wind carried the scent of sage and the distant howl of coyotes, and for a moment, just a moment, the weight of our ghosts seemed lighter. I became a bounty hunter to have something to hate, Jack admitted. If I could blame all Indians for what the Comanches did, I didn't have to blame myself for not being there. Every Apache, every Navajo, every Pueblo man I dragged in, they all wore the faces of the warriors who killed my family. And did it help? No. It just created more ghosts, more children without fathers, more women left alone. He looked at me with haunted eyes. I became the very thing that destroyed me. How's that for irony? It's not irony, I said. It's tragedy. But tragedy doesn't have to be the end of the story. Doesn't it? Look at us. You're nursing back to health a man who would have hunted your brother for money. I'm lying here, dependent on the mercy of people I've wronged. What kind of ending could this possibly have? I thought about the vision again. The white eagle falling, transforming. I don't know, but my grandmother used to say that the spirits don't waste their visions. If they showed me you, there's a reason. Maybe that reason is just this conversation. Maybe it's something more. Your vision, Jack said slowly. You said the eagle could either destroy your people or protect them. Which do you think I am? I think I said carefully that you have been both destroyer and protector in your life. The question is not which you are, but which you choose to be from this moment forward. What if the choice isn't mine? What if your brother decides I've lived long enough? Then at least you will die, knowing someone understood your pain. Someone saw you not as a monster, but as a man broken by loss. That's more than most of us get. Jack reached out, then slowly telegraphing his movement so I wouldn't startle. His calloused hand covered mine just for a moment. Thank you, he said simply, for seeing me as human. We are all human, I replied. That's the tragedy and the hope of it. We all have the capacity for great cruelty and great kindness, often in the same heart. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, I prepared to leave. Jack needed rest and I had duties to attend to. But before I left, he asked one more question. Ayanna, do you think they forgive us, the dead? Do you think they understand? I considered lying, offering easy comfort, but he deserved truth. I think the dead are beyond forgiveness or anger. I think forgiveness is something we must give ourselves, not for our sake, but so we can be useful to the living. Your Margaret and Jimmy are gone. My David and our children are gone. But there are other Margarets and Jimmys, other Davids and morning stars and little wolves who still breathe. What we do for them, that's our redemption. As I walked away, I heard him whisper to the photograph in the locket words I wasn't meant to hear, but that carried on the morning wind anyway. I'm trying, Margaret. God help me. I'm trying to become someone you wouldn't be ashamed of. The white eagle was learning that broken wings could heal, but only if it was willing to feel every bit of pain that came with the mending. The revelation came on the 10th day, during the hour when shadows grow long and truths become unavoidable. I was teaching Jack to identify medicinal plants, partly to keep him occupied, partly because a man who understands healing might be less inclined toward hurting, when Samuel arrived with news that changed everything. Sister, he said in Apache, his face grave, we need to talk, alone. Jack had learned enough of our language by then to recognize the tone, if not the words. He stood to leave, but I motioned for him to stay. Whatever you have to say affects him. He should hear it. Samuel's jaw tightened, but he switched to English. The scouts report army movement from Fort Grant. 2 companies heading this direction. They'll be here in 3 days. They're not looking for us, I said, though uncertainty crept into my voice. We've been careful. No, Samuel agreed, his eyes fixed on Jack. They're looking for him. Jack straightened. That's impossible. No one knows I'm alive. Someone knows. They're offering $500 for information about Jack Brennan, dead or alive. Apparently you were carrying something valuable when you disappeared, something the army wants back. Jack's face went pale. He reached into his boot, pulling out a small leather pouch I hadn't noticed before. With trembling fingers, he opened it, revealing a folded piece of paper covered in symbols and lines. Christ, he whispered. I forgot I even had it. What is it? I demanded. A map, supposed to show the location of a gold mine in the Superstition Mountains. I took it off a dead Apache warrior 2 weeks ago. Figured it might be worth something. He looked up at us with dawning horror. The warrior? He was young, maybe 20. Had a scar across his left eye. The blood drained from my face as surely as if he'd opened my veins. Samuel's hand went to his knife, and I saw murder in his eyes. Joseph Hawkeye, Samuel said, his voice deadly quiet. "My son." The world seemed to stop. The desert wind fell silent. Even the distant cry of a hawk overhead seemed to pause mid-call. Jack looked between us, understanding flooding his features as he saw the resemblance I should have noticed days ago. The same proud cheekbones, the same fierce eyes, the same way of standing as if ready for war or peace with equal readiness. "Your son," Jack repeated numbly. "I killed your son. You killed my nephew." I corrected my own voice, surprisingly steady. "Samuel's son, my sister's child before she died in childbirth, the boy I helped raise." Jack stood slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. He held out the map to Samuel. "Take it. Kill me. You have every right." But Samuel didn't take the map. Instead, he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, confusion mixed with rage, mixed with something that might have been grief, finally finding its outlet. "You knew," he said to me in Apache. "Somehow, you knew. That's why you saved him." "I didn't know," I replied in English, wanting Jack to understand everything. "The spirits knew. The vision." "Damn your vision," Samuel exploded. "This man killed Joseph, shot him for a piece of paper that might lead to gold that doesn't exist." "He was armed," Jack said quietly. "He fired first. I'm not saying that makes it right, but..." Samuel's fist connected with Jack's jaw before any of us could react. Jack went down hard but didn't fight back, didn't even raise his hands to defend himself when Samuel grabbed him by the shirt. "Joseph was scouting for the army." I said my words, cutting through the violence like a blade. "Wasn't he Samuel?" My brother froze, his fist raised for another strike. The truth hung between us, ugly and undeniable. Joseph had been selling information to the army for months. I continued, each word tasting like ash. He thought he could play both sides, take their gold, and warn us of their movements. He thought he was being clever. "You knew." Samuel's voice was broken. "I suspected. The army always seemed to know when we moved camp, except they never quite caught us. Someone was feeding them just enough information to keep them happy, but not enough to find us." I looked at Jack, who was wiping blood from his mouth. "Joseph was probably carrying that map to sell to the army. You just got to him first." "That doesn't make it right," Jack said, struggling to his feet. "I still killed him." "No," Samuel said, releasing Jack's shirt. "You killed a traitor, even if you didn't know it." He turned away, his shoulders shaking. "My own son. A traitor." The three of us stood in that horrible triangle of truth, each carrying a different piece of guilt. Jack for killing a man who turned out to be connected to the people who saved him, Samuel for raising a son who betrayed his people, and me for keeping secrets that might have prevented all of it. "The army," Jack said suddenly. "They're not coming for me. They're coming for the map. Joseph was supposed to deliver it, and when he didn't show up, they started looking. Which means they'll burn this camp to find it," Samuel said. Unless I go to them," Jack finished. "Tell them Joseph tried to rob me, that I killed him in self-defense and took the map. They'll believe it. It's the kind of thing I would have done." "They'll arrest you," I pointed out. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll just take the map and let me go. Either way, your people stay safe." Samuel studied Jack for a long moment. "You would do this for the people of the man you killed." "I've created enough orphans and widows," Jack replied. "If I can prevent more, maybe it means something." "It's not enough," Samuel said, but there was less venom in it than before. "Nothing will bring Joseph back." "No," Jack agreed, "but maybe his death can mean something other than just another killing in a long line of killings." I stepped between them, looking at each man in turn. "There's another way. Jack goes to them, yes, but not alone. I go with him, as his captive." Both men started to protest, but I raised my hand for silence. "Listen, Jack Brennan, the famous bounty hunter, captured the medicine woman of the Apache. He's bringing me in along with the map. The army gets what they want, the map and a valuable prisoner. They won't look for our camp because they'll think Jack extracted our location from me. They'll go to the false location we give them. They could kill you, Jack said. They won't. I'm too valuable. They'll want to use me to negotiate with other bands. I turned to Samuel. And while they're busy with me, you move our people deeper into the mountains to the winter grounds early. This is insane, Jack protested. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for my people, for my brother, for the nephew whose death I might have prevented if I'd confronted him about his betrayal. I shook my head. This isn't your choice, Jack Brennan. This is mine. Samuel was watching us with an expression I couldn't read. There's something else. Something you're not saying. I met his gaze steadily. The vision. The white eagle protecting our people. This is how it begins. Or how it ends, Samuel countered. With you in chains and him collecting another bounty. Jack stepped forward, and for the first time since I'd found him, I saw the man he must have been before loss broke him. Strong, determined, dangerous. I swear on the graves of my wife and son, he said, looking directly at Samuel, I will not let any harm come to her. I'll die first. Your word means nothing to me, Samuel replied. Then believe this, Jack said, pulling out his locket and opening it. I swear on their memory, on Margaret and little Jimmy. If I betray your sister, may their spirits haunt me for eternity. May I never know peace in this life or the next. The oath hung in the air like smoke from a sacred fire. Even Samuel seemed affected by its weight. You would risk their eternal peace for her safety, he asked. They would want me to, Jack replied simply. Margaret always said the measure of a man isn't in his successes, but in what he does after his failures. I've failed enough. It's time to do something else. I felt something shift in my chest, a warmth I hadn't experienced since David's death. Not love. It was too soon, too complicated for that. But recognition, perhaps. The recognition of one broken soul seeing another and finding beauty in the cracks. We leave at dawn, I said, making the decision final. Jack, you'll need to look like you've been in a fight. Samuel, you'll need to rough him up convincingly. With pleasure, Samuel said, but there was less hatred in it, now replaced by something more complex. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. That night, as we prepared for our dangerous charade, Jack found me by the fire. Why are you really doing this? Because the spirits rarely give second chances, I replied, and because I think you're mine. Your second chance? No, I said, meeting his eyes in the firelight. You're my first chance, to do something that matters, to transform pain into purpose. And if we die trying, I thought of David, of my children, of Joseph, who was both traitor and family. Then we die as ourselves, not as the ghosts we've been pretending to be. Jack reached out, hesitated, then took my hand. His touch was gentle, uncertain, as if he'd forgotten how to offer comfort rather than pain. Ayanna. He said my name, sounding like a prayer on his lips. Don't, I interrupted. Don't say anything you might have to take back. Don't make promises you might not be able to keep. Just be here, in this moment. That's enough. We sat together in silence, two people about to risk everything on a plan that could destroy us both, finding peace in the space between heartbeats, in the possibility that redemption might wear the face of the very person you were meant to hate. Tomorrow, we would ride toward the army, toward danger, toward a future neither of us could predict. But tonight, under stars that had witnessed every human tragedy and triumph since the world began, we were simply two souls recognizing themselves in each other's wounds. The white eagle was learning to fly again, and it would need all its strength for what was coming. The dawn came too soon, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold that seemed prophetic. Jack stood before Samuel as our warriors applied convincing bruises to his face and arms, each blow carefully calculated to look severe without causing real damage. I watched from the medicine lodge, mixing herbs that would stain my wrists to mimic rope burns. Remember, Samuel said, landing another controlled punch to Jack's ribs. You tracked her for 3 days. She fought you at Skeleton Canyon. You had to knock her unconscious to take her." "I know the story." Jack grunted, absorbing the hit. "Question is whether I can sell it." "You were one of the best bounty hunters in the territory," I said, approaching them with lengths of rope. "Selling lies to the army should be easy for you." Jack met my eyes, and I saw the hurt there. I never lied about the captures. Never needed to. The truth was damning enough. "And now you'll lie to save lives instead of destroying them," I replied, beginning to tie the ropes around my wrists in a special way. They looked secure, but could be slipped quickly if needed. Consider it penance. Old Martha Goodwater emerged from her dwelling carrying something wrapped in deer hide. She spoke in Apache, her ancient voice carrying the authority of decades. She says, Samuel translated reluctantly, that if two people are going to pretend to be captor and captive, they need to understand the bonds between them. She has something that might help. Martha unwrapped the bundle, revealing 2 matching silver bracelets, each inscribed with symbols I didn't recognize. She spoke again, her eyes moving between Jack and me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "These are binding bracelets," Samuel translated, his voice strange. "Used in the old days when enemies needed to become allies for survival. Each person wears one. As long as both wear them, their fates are tied. If one dies, the other is honor-bound to complete their mission." "That's superstition," Jack said, but he was already extending his wrist. Martha placed one bracelet on him, then turned to me. When she clasped the second around my wrist, I felt a shock of something. Not pain, but awareness. As if I could suddenly sense Jack's presence in a way that went beyond sight or sound. "Now," Martha said in broken English, surprising us all, "you are bound, in pretend and in truth. The spirits watch." Jack looked at the bracelet, then at me. "Feels heavier than it looks." "Most important things do," I replied. We rode out as the sun climbed higher, Jack on his recovered horse, me walking behind with my hands seemingly bound to his saddle horn. The image we presented was carefully crafted, the triumphant bounty hunter and his valuable prize. For the first few miles, we traveled in silence, getting used to our roles. Then Jack began to speak, his voice different now, harder, more like the man he used to be. "You know what they'll do to you at the fort. Try to break me, use me for information, eventually trade me for army prisoners, or use me as leverage against other bands. You say that like it's nothing. I say it like it's something I've prepared for my whole life. Apache women know that capture is always a possibility. We're taught from childhood how to survive it." Jack pulled the horse to a stop and dismounted. For a moment, I thought something was wrong. Then he walked back to me and loosened the rope slightly. "I can't do this," he said. "I can't take you to them. You have to. Our people, your people, not ours. I'm not Apache." "No," I agreed. "But you could be." The words surprised us both. Jack stared at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or fear of hope. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when this is over, when my people are safe, you could come back, not as Jack Brennan the bounty hunter, but as someone new, someone who chooses to protect rather than hunt. Your brother would kill me. Samuel will do what's best for our people. And a white man who understands both worlds, who could help us navigate the changes coming. That might be what's best." Jack reached out his fingers, ghosting over the false rope burns on my wrists. "And what about you? What do you want?" "I want to stop losing people," I said simply. "I want to build something instead of always watching things burn. I stopped, unable to voice what I was only beginning to understand myself. "Tell me," he urged, his voice gentle now, all pretense dropped. "I want to know what it feels like to choose love instead of having it chosen for me. My marriage to David was arranged when we were children. We grew to love each other, but we never chose it. This thing between us, whatever it is, it's choosing." Jack's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining despite the ropes. "This is insane. We've known each other 10 days. You're my prisoner. You're my possibility, I interrupted. In a world that offers so few of them, that means everything. We heard horses approaching from the east. Jack quickly remounted, and I adjusted my posture to look properly defeated. 3 Army scouts crested the ridge, rifles ready. "That you, Brennan," one called out. "Heard you were dead." "Takes more than the desert to kill me, Patterson," Jack replied, his voice carrying that old authority. Though it came close. The scouts approached, eyeing me with interest. "What you got there?" "Medicine woman of the White Mountain Band. Goes by Ayanna. She's the one had that map everyone's looking for." Patterson, a grizzled soldier with sun-damaged skin and cruel eyes, rode closer. "Pretty thing for a savage. Sure, you want to turn her in right away." Jack's hand moved to his gun, the gesture subtle but clear. "She's under my protection until we reach the fort. Anyone who touches her answers to me." "Still playing by rules, Brennan, out here." Patterson laughed. "That why you never made real money?" "That's why I'm still alive," Jack countered. "The fort's still offering $500 for Apache medicine women. $800 for this one. She's Shadowhawk's sister." I saw Jack's jaw tighten. He hadn't known the amount. $800 was more than most men saw in 2 years. "Well then," Jack said, his voice carefully neutral, "looks like my luck's finally turned." We rode with the scouts for 3 hours before reaching the Army patrol. 2 full companies, just as Samuel's scouts had reported. The commanding officer, a Captain Reynolds, greeted Jack with suspicious enthusiasm. "Brennan, we thought the Apache had gotten you." "Almost did," Jack replied, helping me dismount in a way that looked rough, but was actually carefully supportive. "This one's band found me, tried to use their medicine to keep me alive for torture. I turned the tables." "How?" Jack smiled coldly. "Let's just say their medicine woman here makes poor decisions about who to trust." Reynolds studied me with the calculating look of a man seeing profit. "She speak English. Some. Enough to be useful." "And the map." Jack pulled it from his shirt, handing it over. "Got it from her. Says it leads to gold the Apache have been mining for generations." It was a lie that would appeal to the Army's greed. Reynolds examined the map with growing excitement. "We'll need her to translate the markers," he said. "That's your business," Jack replied. "I just want my money and a chance to resupply." "Of course, but stay the night. We could use your expertise planning the route." Jack glanced at me, a quick check disguised as a dismissive look. I gave the slightest nod. "One night," Jack agreed. "But the woman stays under my watch until you pay me. She's tricky." That night, they put us in adjacent cells in the temporary stockade they'd constructed. The guards, convinced by Jack's performance, gave him the key to my cell for his protection. When we were finally alone, Jack sat against the bars separating us, and I mirrored his position. $800, he said quietly. "That's enough to start over anywhere. California, Oregon, even back east." "Is that what you want, to start over somewhere else?" "I don't know what I want anymore," he admitted. 10 days ago, I wanted to die. Now, he touched the silver bracelet Martha had given him. Now I want things I have no right to want, such as a different life, a chance to make amends, you. The last word hung between us like a bridge we were both afraid to cross. "Jack," I began, but he held up his hand. "Don't say it's impossible. I know it's impossible. A bounty hunter and an Apache medicine woman. The territory would burn us both for even thinking it." "The territory is changing," I said. "Maybe we could change with it. Or maybe we're both fools heading for disaster." I reached through the bars, finding his hand. "Then we're fools together, bound by silver and circumstance and something neither of us expected. When this is over," Jack said, "when your people are safe, what then? Then we decide if what we're feeling is real or just the intensity of danger." "But Jack," I squeezed his hand, "I already know my answer." "How can you know?" "Because when you look at me, you don't see an Apache woman worth $800. You see Ayanna." And when I look at you, I don't see the bounty hunter who killed my nephew. I see Jack trying to become someone new." "The army moves out tomorrow," Jack said. "They'll expect me to lead them to your camp." "Then lead them to the false coordinates we prepared. By the time they realize it's a trick, Samuel will have moved everyone. And you, I'll escape during the confusion. You'll chase me, of course, but somehow I'll elude the famous Jack Brennan." "My reputation will be ruined," he said with a slight smile. "Good. Jack Brennan needs to disappear anyway. Someone else can emerge from his ashes. Someone who could live among the Apache. Someone who could live between worlds, helping both navigate the storm that's coming." Jack turned to face me fully through the bars. "Ayanna, I need you to know, if anything goes wrong tomorrow, if I have to choose between my old life and protecting you, you'll protect me," I said with certainty. "The binding bracelet wouldn't have accepted you otherwise. You believe in that, the magic. I believe in signs, in possibilities, in second chances that come disguised as disaster. I touch my own bracelet, and I believe that sometimes two broken people can build something whole." As we sat in that stockade surrounded by enemies pretending to be captor and captive, while discovering we were neither and both, I felt the world shift. Tomorrow would bring danger, possibly death. But tonight, in this impossible moment, we had found something worth the risk, the choice to transform pain into purpose, vengeance into forgiveness, and two separate paths into one shared journey. The escape went exactly as planned, which should have been my first warning that nothing else would. During the chaos of the army discovering the false coordinates, empty canyons where Apache camps had never existed, I slipped my bonds and vanished into a sandstorm that rolled in like divine intervention. Jack fired 3 shots into the air, shouting curses that would have made a saint blush, then rode after me in the wrong direction entirely. By the time the dust settled, I was 5 miles away, hidden in a cave system that the army maps didn't know existed. Jack found me there 3 days later, as we'd arranged, but he wasn't alone. "Don't shoot," he called out before entering. "I'm bringing someone who needs help." He emerged from the canyon shadows carrying a child, a boy no more than 8 Apache by his features, burning with fever. Behind him limped an old Mexican woman, her face carved deep with worry lines. "Found them being chased by scalp hunters," Jack explained, laying the boy gently on my blanket. "The old woman says he's her grandson, says his Apache mother died last winter, and she's been trying to get him to relatives." I knelt beside the child, feeling his forehead, checking his eyes. "Pneumonia. How long has he been sick?" 3 days. The old woman answered in Spanish-accented English. "Please, I have nothing to pay." "But payment isn't necessary," I said, already reaching for my medicine bag. "Jack, I need water boiled, and see if you can find some willow bark in the grove by the stream." For the next 2 days, we worked together to save the child's life. Jack surprised me with his gentleness, the way he held the boy's head, while I spooned medicine between his lips, how he sang half-remembered lullabies his mother had taught him when the fevered dreams grew bad. "You would have been a good father," I said during one of the quiet moments. "I was a good father," he corrected softly. "For 7 years. Just wasn't good enough to keep my boy safe." The child, Miguel, we learned, survived. When his fever broke, he looked at Jack with eyes too knowing for his age and said, "You're sad inside, like my mama was." Jack's composure cracked just a little. "Yeah, kid, I am. Mama said sad doesn't last forever, just feels like it." The old woman, Rosa, turned out to be more than she appeared. As Miguel recovered, she revealed she ran a hidden trading post in the mountains, a neutral ground where Apache, Mexican, and even some sympathetic whites came to trade without violence. "You could stay," she offered. "I need protection, and you two—" She looked between Jack and me with knowing eyes. "You two need a place where your worlds can meet." Jack and I exchanged glances. We'd been dancing around our futures since the escape, neither quite ready to voice what came next. "It's not safe," Jack said. "If the army finds out I helped her escape, "The army thinks you're dead," Rosa interrupted. "Scalp hunters have been showing your wanted poster in towns, claiming they killed you. Someone even brought in a body, collected the bounty." "What?" Jack stood abruptly. "Who?" "Your friend Tom Morrison said he found you dead in the desert, victim of Apache justice. Very convincing story, very convenient timing." I watched Jack process this. Tom Morrison, the neighbor who was supposed to watch his family the day they died. The betrayal ran deeper than just one day of negligence. "He let them die," Jack said, his voice hollow. "Tom let them die, and now he's profiting from my supposed death. Or he's giving you a chance at a new life," I suggested carefully. "Dead men can't be hunted. Dead men can't seek revenge either." "Is that what you want, revenge?" Jack was quiet for a long moment, watching Miguel sleep peacefully between us. "No. I want what I can't have, my family back. But maybe." He looked at me. "Maybe I could have something else. Something different, but still good." Rosa's trading post was a marvel of practical architecture built into a box canyon with natural fortifications and hidden escape routes. She'd been running it for 15 years, ever since her son, Miguel's father, was killed in the crossfire between Mexican soldiers and Apache raiders. "Neutrality is the only way to survive," she explained as she showed us around. "Everyone needs something. I provide it without judgment." "Must be dangerous," Jack observed, noting the strategic placement of windows and the reinforced doors. "Everything worthwhile is dangerous," Rosa replied, giving us another of those knowing looks. We stayed. What was meant to be a few days became a week, then 2. Jack and I fell into a rhythm. He handled security and repairs, while I provided medical care to travelers and helped Rosa with her herb garden. We shared meals, shared stories, shared the quiet moments that slowly rebuilt us both. The first test came when a band of Apache traders arrived, led by none other than Samuel. He stood in the doorway, taking in the domestic scene. Jack repairing a saddle, me grinding medicine, Miguel playing with wooden horses on the floor. His hand went to his knife, but didn't draw it. "Sister," he said in Apache. "You live, I live," I replied in English, wanting Jack to understand everything. "We both do. I heard he was dead, killed by scalp hunters." "A convenient fiction," Jack said, not looking up from his work. "Seems I'm worth more dead than alive to some people." Samuel entered slowly like a wolf in unfamiliar territory. "You've made a home here." "A temporary one," I said, though even as I spoke, I knew it was becoming more. "With him." Samuel's voice carried disbelief and something else, hurt perhaps. "With a man who's trying to become someone different," I replied. "Just as you did after the wars, brother. You were not always Shadowhawk, the peaceful leader. Once you were Samuel, the warrior who took 30 scalps in revenge for our father's death." "That was different." "Was it you chose to change when you met Julia, when you realized vengeance was eating you alive? Jack is choosing to change too." Samuel studied Jack for a long moment. "You teach the boy to ride." "Someone should," Jack replied. "Every child needs to know how to ride, how to be free. Even Apache children. Especially Apache children. They'll need every skill to survive what's coming." It was the right answer. Samuel's posture relaxed marginally. "Our people have moved to the winter grounds safely. The army found nothing." "Good," I said. "Will you eat with us?" The meal was tense but civil. Miguel, with the innocent wisdom of children, broke the ice by asking Samuel to tell stories of brave warriors. By the end, he was sitting in Samuel's lap, absorbed in tales of Apache heroes. "You care for him like a son," Samuel observed, watching Jack help Miguel prepare for bed. "He reminds me of what I lost," Jack replied honestly, "and what I could maybe have again if I'm brave enough." "Bravery is not your problem, white man. Trust is." "Then I'll earn it." "That could take a lifetime. I have nowhere else to be." Samuel left the next morning, but not before pulling me aside. "This path you're choosing, it has no good ending. The territory won't accept it. Our people won't accept it. You're building something that will be torn down." "Maybe," I agreed. But Samuel, I've lived in ashes. I've been the walking dead. This, whatever it is, it's life. Complicated, impossible life, but life nonetheless. And when they come for him, the army, the scalp hunters, the ghosts of his past, then we face them together. That's what people do when they're building something. He touched my face gently, a gesture from our childhood. You love him. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I'm learning to, and he's learning to love himself again, which might be harder. The elders won't approve a marriage. I'm not asking for approval. I'm just asking for the chance to try. Samuel sighed, looking every bit the concerned older brother. If he hurts you, he won't. He's too busy hurting himself for all his past sins. If anything, I'll have to teach him he deserves happiness. As the weeks passed, our improvised family solidified. Jack taught Miguel to track and hunt. I taught him Apache stories and Mexican songs from Rosa. We were three cultures blending in a way the territory said was impossible. The trading post became our world. Travelers brought news from outside. The army had given up the search. The Apache bands were surviving in the mountains. The territory was slowly changing as the railroad pushed further west. But inside our canyon, time moved differently. We measured days not by the calendar, but by Miguel's growth, by the garden's progress, by the slow healing of old wounds. One night, a month into our new life, Jack found me on the roof watching the stars. Rosa says we're good for business, he said, settling beside me. Apparently word spreading about a safe place where Apache medicine meets American protection. Is that what we are, Apache medicine and American protection? We're something, he said. I don't think there's a word for it yet. My grandmother would say we're writing a new story, one that hasn't been told before. And how does it end? I turned to look at him, this man who'd arrived dying in the desert, who'd killed my nephew, who'd saved a child, who'd given up everything he was for the chance to become something new. I don't know, I said honestly, but for the first time since my family died, I want to find out. He reached for my hand and I let him take it. We sat in silence, two people building a home in the space between worlds, knowing it was fragile, knowing it was dangerous, knowing it was worth every risk. Below us, Rosa sang Miguel to sleep with an old Spanish lullaby about lovers separated by war who found each other again in dreams. The melody drifted up to us, a blessing on this strange sanctuary we'd created. Ayana, Jack said suddenly, I need to tell you something. About Tom Morrison, about the day my family died. You don't have to, I do. If we're building something real, you need to know everything. He took a breath. I think Tom let them die on purpose. He wanted Margaret, had wanted her since before we married. I think he saw the Comanche raid as an opportunity. You can't know that for certain. No, but him claiming my death, collecting bounty on it. It fits. He's clearing the ledger, making sure I can never come back to accuse him. Do you want to go back, confront him? Jack was quiet for a long moment. A month ago, yes. Now. He looked at our joined hands. Now I have something to lose again, something to protect. Revenge is a luxury for men with nothing left to live for. So you choose life over justice. I choose the future over the past. Miguel needs parents. Rosa needs protection. You need... He paused. What do I need? Someone who understands that love can grow in the ashes. Someone who won't try to make you forget your first family, but will help you build a second one. And you need forgiveness, purpose, you. The last word came out barely above a whisper. I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. Then we teach each other how to live again, how to trust again, how to build something from nothing but hope and stubbornness. That's all. That's everything, Jack. Everything that matters. As if in agreement, a shooting star blazed across the desert sky. Miguel would say later that he saw it too through his window and knew it meant we were home. The first winter at Rosa's trading post tested everything we'd built. Snow came early, and heavy, sealing the canyon passes and trapping us with whatever supplies we'd managed to store. It also trapped us with unexpected guests, a mixed band of refugees fleeing the violence that had erupted between Mexican federales and Apache raiders near the border. 14 souls in total, 6 Apache, 4 Mexicans, 3 whites, and 1 Chinese railroad worker who'd gotten separated from his crew. They stumbled into our sanctuary, half frozen, desperate, carrying children, and wounded. Rosa looked at Jack and me, her expression saying what we all knew. We barely had enough food for ourselves. "We share what we have," I said before anyone could argue. "That's what this place is for." Jack nodded, already calculating. "I can hunt. Even in snow, there's game if you know where to look." "Hunting won't feed 18 people through winter," one of the Apache men said. His name was Marcus Crowfeather, and I recognized him as one of Samuel's scouts. "We should move on. Find somewhere else." "In this weather with children, that's death," Jack replied firmly. "We make it work here together, or we die separately in the snow." It was the beginning of something neither of us had expected, a community born from necessity, but held together by something stronger. The Chinese man who called himself simply Chen turned out to be invaluable. He knew ways to preserve food. I'd never seen techniques from his homeland that stretched our meager supplies. One of the Mexican women, Isabella, had been a schoolteacher before her town was burned. She began teaching the children, Miguel, 2 Apache girls, and a white boy whose parents had died of fever. "This is impossible," Marcus said one evening, watching Apache and white children learning letters together. "The world doesn't work this way." "Our world does," Jack replied. "Inside this canyon, we write our own rules." But the outside world had rules of its own, and they found us 3 weeks into winter. Tom Morrison arrived with 4 men, all armed, all wearing the kind of expressions that meant violence was negotiable, but probable. Jack saw them first from his watch position, and I watched the blood drain from his face. "Get everyone into the back caves," he told me quietly. "Take the children first. Jack, go. Now." But Tom had already spotted him. "Jack Brennan heard you were dead, friend." Imagine my surprise when a traveler mentioned seeing you up here, living like some kind of savage king. Jack stepped out to meet them, keeping them focused on him while I gathered the others. But I didn't flee. Instead, I positioned myself where I could hear and see Rosa's old rifle steady in my hands. "Tom," Jack said, his voice carrying deadly calm. "Been a while. 3 years since Margaret's funeral. You remember Margaret, don't you, Jack? Pretty thing. Shame what happened to her." I saw Jack's hands flex, fighting the urge to go for his gun. "What do you want?" "Well, seeing as you're legally dead, I've been taking care of your affairs, sold your land, settled your debts, even collected that bounty on you, least I could do for an old friend." "You were supposed to watch them," Jack said, and the pain in his voice was raw. "I asked you to watch them." Tom's smile was cruel. "I did watch. Watched the smoke rise. Watched Margaret try to run with the boy. Watched her realize no help was coming." The confession hung in the air like ice. Jack stood frozen, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. "You let them die." "Let them, Jack? I practically invited those Comanches. Told them about the ranch with 1 man gone, about the woman and child alone. Of course, I didn't expect them to be quite so thorough. You son of a... Now. You're dead. Remember, dead men can't throw accusations. But live men hiding up here with Apache squaws and mixed-blood children. Well, that's different. That's worth something to the right people." "What do you want?" Jack repeated. "Everything you've built here. This trading post is perfectly positioned. Could make a fortune running guns and whiskey to the Indians, selling information to the army. All I need is for you and your friends to disappear. And if we refuse," Tom gestured to his men, "then we make you disappear anyway, starting with that Apache woman you're sweet on. Isabella, isn't it?" "Hyena," I said, stepping out with the rifle aimed at Tom's chest. "And you're leaving. Now." Tom laughed. "Look at this, boys. Jack Brennan's taken himself a savage bride. What would Margaret think? Margaret would think you're a murderer and a coward, I said, my voice steady despite my rage. She'd want Jack to put you down like the rabid dog you are. Probably right, Tom agreed easily. But she's not here to want anything, is she? That's when Chen emerged from the shadows behind Tom's men, moving silent as smoke. The Mexican women appeared on the roof. Marcus and the other Apache warriors materialized from positions around the canyon. Even the children were visible in the windows, Isabella having armed them with Rosa's collection of weapons. Tom's confident expression faltered. You're bluffing. This many people can't survive here. We're surviving just fine, Rosa said, appearing with her own shotgun. We're a community, something you wouldn't understand. A community? Tom spat. Whites living with Apache Mexicans and Chinese. That's not a community, that's an abomination. No, Jack said quietly. It's the future, and you're the past. Tom's hand went for his gun, but Jack was faster. The shot echoed off the canyon walls, and Tom Morrison fell backward into the snow, a red stain spreading across his chest. His men raised their weapons, but found themselves staring down 17 armed people, including children, steady enough to shoot. Your boss is dead, Jack announced. You can die with him, or you can leave. Choose quickly. They chose to leave, dragging Tom's body with them. We watched until they disappeared into the snowy distance, then maintained watch for 3 more days to ensure they didn't return. That night, the entire community gathered in the main room. Jack sat apart staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. You did what needed doing, Marcus said, surprising everyone. He would have killed us all. Doesn't make it right, Jack replied. No, I agreed, sitting beside him. But sometimes there is no right, only necessary. Miguel climbed into Jack's lap, small arms wrapping around the man's chest. You protected us. That's what families do. The word family rippled through the room. We were Apache and white Mexican and Chinese, but Miguel was right. Somewhere in the struggle to survive, we'd become something none of us had expected. Isabella stood up. If we're family, then we need rules, laws we all agree to follow. The first law should be about the children, Chen suggested in his careful English. All children learn from all adults. No separation by blood or birth. Agreed, Rosa said. Second law, all contribute according to ability, all receive according to need. Third, Marcus added, disputes are settled by counsel, not violence. We've all seen enough blood. Fourth, Jack said, finally looking up, everyone who enters peaceful stays peaceful. This is neutral ground. Fifth, I contributed. We protect each other. An attack on one is an attack on all. We spent hours that night creating the laws of our small society. Some were practical, work rotations, resource sharing, defense strategies. Others were revolutionary. Intermarriage would be recognized. Children of mixed heritage would be celebrated, not shunned. Religious and cultural practices would be respected equally. You know this can't last, Marcus said privately to Jack and me later. The territory won't allow it. Maybe not, Jack agreed, but every day it does last, we prove it's possible. As winter deepened, our community solidified in unexpected ways. The Apache taught everyone their knowledge of desert survival. The Mexicans shared their techniques for preserving food and making tools. Chen showed us medicines from his homeland. Jack taught defense and tracking. I became the bridge between all groups, translating not just languages, but cultures. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, we held our first community celebration, a fusion of traditions that should have been chaos, but somehow worked. Apache drums mixed with Mexican guitars. Chen prepared dishes that combined ingredients from all our cultures. The children performed a play Isabella had written telling the story of how we all came together. Watching Miguel on that makeshift stage, confident and happy, speaking Apache, Spanish, English, and even some Chinese phrases Chen had taught him, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my first family died. Hope for the future. "He's remarkable," Jack said beside me. "All the children are. They don't see the boundaries we do." "They're growing up in a different world," I replied. "The one we're building for them. Think it will survive them. This place, these ideas. Look around Jack. A year ago, would you have believed any of this possible?" He surveyed the room. Apache warriors laughing with Mexican farmers, Chen teaching card games to white traders, Rosa bouncing a mixed heritage baby on her knee, while its Apache mother and white father watched with joy. "No," he admitted. "I wouldn't have believed any of it." "Then maybe our children will build things we can't even imagine." That night, after the celebration ended and the community settled into sleep, Jack asked me to marry him. Not in the traditional white way, not in the Apache way, but in our way. "I can't offer you much," he said. "I'm still legally dead. I have no property, no money, no future beyond this canyon." "You have yourself," I replied. "Changed, scarred, but trying. That's all I need. Your brother will never approve. Samuel doesn't have to. This is our choice, our path. And the others, the community. Look what we celebrated tonight. If they can accept all of that, they can accept us." Jack pulled out something I didn't expect, a ring carved from white stone, intricate with symbols I didn't recognize. "Chen helped me make it," he explained. "The symbols are from all our traditions. Apache for strength, Mexican for passion, Chinese for harmony, and, well, I added something American. What hope! It's the only thing my culture gave me worth keeping." I took the ring, feeling its weight, not just physical, but symbolic. Spring, when the pass is clear, we'll invite everyone. Your brother's band, Rosa's trader friends, even Chen's railroad crew if we can find them. Show the territory what's possible when people choose connection over division. They might come to stop us. They might. Or they might come to witness something new being born. 3 days later, a rider arrived with news that would test our newly formed community. The Army was planning a major campaign against the Apache bands in spring. They intended to force all Apache onto reservations or across the border into Mexico. No exceptions. "We have to warn Samuel," I said immediately. "If you leave now in this weather, you might not make it," Jack pointed out. "If I don't leave now, my people won't survive the spring." "Our people," Jack corrected. "And we go together." Marcus stepped forward. "We all go. Those who can fight, fight. Those who can't prepare this place as a refuge." "You'd risk everything for Apache who aren't even your band," I asked the room. Isabella answered for them all. 6 weeks ago, you risked everything for strangers in a snowstorm. Family helps family." As we prepared for the dangerous journey to warn Samuel, I realized our small community had become something revolutionary. Proof that the artificial boundaries between peoples could be crossed, that enemies could become family, that love could grow in the most unlikely soil. The trading post would be our base, but our community would be our strength. Whatever came in spring, army attacks, territorial violence, or even peace, we would face it as one people bound not by blood, but by choice. "You know what we've created here?" Jack asked as we packed supplies. "A target," I replied honestly, "for everyone who fears change. Maybe, but also a beacon for everyone who hopes for something better." Miguel ran up carrying a package. "For the journey," he said. Inside was a flag Isabella and the children had made, a patchwork of fabrics from all our cultures sewn together into something that had never existed before. "What is it?" Jack asked. "Our flag," Miguel said proudly. "For our nation, a nation of 18 souls in a hidden canyon, but a nation nonetheless. One built on the radical idea that people could choose to be family, that love could transcend hate, that the future didn't have to look like the past. As we rode out into the winter storm, I carried that flag next to my heart, a symbol of impossible hope made real. Spring came with blood on its hands. The first warning was smoke on the eastern horizon, black pillars rising against the dawn sky like accusations. Jack saw it from his watch position and knew immediately what it meant. The Army's campaign had begun early. "They're burning the winter camps," he told our hastily assembled council. Driving the bands toward the border, Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "Samuel's people are directly in their path." "We warned them," Isabella said. "They should have moved." "Warning isn't enough when you have elders who can't travel and children too young for hard riding," I replied, already packing my medicine bag. "They'll stand and fight. Then they'll die," Chen said quietly. "The Army has artillery now, new rifles. I saw them when I worked on the railroad. No Apache band can stand against that." Jack was studying our makeshift map, his mind working through scenarios I could see playing out in his eyes. "Unless they don't stand alone." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. "You're talking about uniting the bands," Marcus said. "Apache Mexican refugees, white settlers who oppose the Army's methods. That's never been done." "Because no one's ever had a place to unite them," Jack replied, gesturing around our canyon. "We do. We have supplies, defensive positions, and most importantly, proof that different peoples can work together." "The Army will destroy us," one of the Mexican men argued. "We're 18 people against hundreds of soldiers. We're 18 people with knowledge of every trail, every water source, every defensive position in these mountains," Jack countered. "And we won't be 18 for long if we can reach the scattered groups before the Army does." Rosa, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "My trader contacts have been reporting Army movements for weeks. They're not just targeting Apache. Any settlement that's harbored or traded with natives is being classified as hostile." "Then we're already targets," I said. "The only question is whether we die hiding or fighting. Or," Jack said, his voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard since his bounty hunting days, "we give them a third option. We disappear." Over the next 3 hours, Jack laid out a plan that was equal parts brilliant and insane. We would evacuate not just our canyon, but every threatened settlement we could reach, creating a moving city of refugees that would stay ahead of the Army while bleeding them through guerrilla tactics. "The Army expects Apache to fight like Apache always have," he explained. "Direct raids, then retreat to known strongholds. But what if we fought like something else, like nothing they've seen before?" "You're talking about turning farmers and traders into soldiers," Marcus protested. "No, I'm talking about turning survivors into something more dangerous than soldiers. I'm talking about people fighting for their homes, their families, their future." The debate raged until noon, when our scouts reported riders approaching. Samuel arrived with 50 warriors and nearly 200 refugees, women, children, elderly wounded from a skirmish with Army scouts. His face was grim as he dismounted. 3 bands already forced across the border, 2 destroyed. "The Army has Apache scouts from the reservation showing them our hidden springs, our secret paths." "Brother," I said, embracing him despite his stiffness, "we have a plan. He looked at Jack with undisguised hostility. "The white man has a plan to save Apache." "The white man has a plan to save everyone," Jack replied evenly. "Apache, Mexican, even whites who don't want this war. But it only works if we stop seeing each other as different peoples and start seeing each other as one force." "Impossible. Look around you," I said, gesturing to our mixed community already working together to tend the wounded and feed the refugees. "We've been doing impossible all winter." Samuel watched Chen treating an Apache child's wounds, while Mexican women prepared food and white traders organized supplies. "This is 18 people in one canyon. You're talking about hundreds, maybe thousands." "Yes," Jack said simply, "I am." That night, we held a council that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Apache war chiefs sat beside Mexican farmers. White traders who'd lost everything to army confiscation shared fire with Chinese workers fleeing railroad bosses. At the center, Jack and I stood as living proof that enemies could become allies. The Army divides us to conquer us. Jack addressed the assembly. Apache fight Apache scouts. Mexicans are turned against natives for bounties. Whites are told all others are enemies. But what if we refuse their divisions? Pretty words from a former bounty hunter. One chief spat. How many Apache did you drag to the reservation? 17. Jack answered without hesitation. And I'll carry that guilt forever. But I can't change the past. I can only offer my knowledge of Army tactics patrol patterns and weaknesses to keep them from taking anyone else. He speaks truth about the Army, Samuel admitted reluctantly. Their pattern is predictable. They push bands toward the border-burned settlements, then establish forts on the cleared land. So we make their pattern work against them, Jack continued. We evacuate ahead of them, but not randomly. We choose where they chase us, lead them into box canyons in summer heat, draw them away from water sources, make them extend their supply lines until they break. And while they chase ghosts, the Mexican leader asked, we circle behind and destroy their supply depots, Marcus said, beginning to understand. Without food and ammunition, they'll have to withdraw. You're forgetting the Apache scouts, Samuel pointed out. They know our tactics. Then we don't use Apache tactics, I suggested. We use something new, something they can't predict because it's never existed before. The debate continued through the night, but by dawn we had an agreement. The Covenant, we called it, a formal alliance between all peoples willing to resist forced removal. Jack and Samuel would serve as joint war chiefs, their different knowledge combining into something neither could achieve alone. But the Army moved faster than expected. The attack came at midday while we were still organizing the evacuation. Artillery shells screamed overhead, exploding against the canyon walls and sending rock fragments flying like shrapnel. Northeast Ridge, Jack shouted, reading the trajectory. They're trying to seal the main entrance. Our fighters scrambled for positions while non-combatants fled toward the hidden exits. But the Army had learned. Soldiers appeared at passes we thought secret Apache scouts, having revealed paths our people had used for generations. We're trapped, someone screamed. No, Jack said, his voice cutting through the panic. We're exactly where we need to be. He'd anticipated this. The night before he'd placed charges Dynamite Chen had stolen from railroad supplies at key points throughout the canyon. Everyone to the caves, he ordered. Now. As people streamed toward the reinforced cave system, Jack and a small team of volunteers stayed behind to trigger the charges. I watched from the cave mouth as he ran from position to position, timing each explosion perfectly. The first blast dropped a rock shelf onto the artillery position, silencing the big guns. The second sealed a narrow pass, trapping a company of soldiers. The third, the one that made my heart stop, brought down part of the canyon wall just as Jack dove for cover. When the dust cleared, our canyon was transformed. What had been a trading post was now a fortress with new defensive positions and blocked approaches that would funnel any attack into killing grounds. Learned that from Confederate raiders, Jack explained later, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Sometimes the best defense is to redesign the battlefield. The siege lasted 8 days. The Army, expecting quick victory, found themselves in a stalemate. Their Apache scouts couldn't find paths that no longer existed. Their superior numbers meant nothing in the narrow approaches Jack had created. Their supplies dwindled while ours, carefully rationed, held steady. On the 9th day, something unexpected happened. A group of white settlers arrived at the Army lines demanding to speak with the commanding officer. They were families from the valley people who'd traded with us, whose children Miguel had played with. This is wrong, their leader, a German immigrant named Hans, declared loud enough for us to hear. These people aren't hostiles, they're our neighbors. "They harbor Apache," the colonel responded. "They harbor anyone who comes peaceful. They saved my boy when he had fever. That Apache woman knows medicine white doctors don't." More voices joined Hans, Mexican traders, even some off-duty soldiers who'd bought supplies from Rosa. The crowd grew until the colonel had to address them. "Disperse immediately or be arrested for sedition." "Arrest us then," Hans shouted back. "But know that newspapers in Tucson and Santa Fe are already writing about the army attacking a peaceful trading post." Jack seized the moment. Under a white flag, he walked out to meet the colonel, and I watched from the walls as they talked. The conversation was too distant to hear, but I saw the colonel's expression change from confident to concerned to calculating. When Jack returned, he carried terms. Safe passage for all non-Apache to relocate to approved settlements. The Apache to surrender for relocation to the reservation. "Never," Samuel said immediately. "I wasn't finished," Jack continued. "I told him we'd need 3 days to convince the Apache. During that time, ceasefire holds." "You bought us 3 days," Marcus asked. "I bought us 3 nights," Jack corrected. "Chen, how much dynamite do we have left?" On the first night, we evacuated the children and elderly through a tunnel Chen's team had spent 2 days secretly extending. They emerged a mile away, where Rosa had arranged wagons. On the second night, we moved the wounded and half our supplies, establishing a new camp in the mountains that Army maps didn't know existed. On the third night, we executed Jack's masterpiece of deception. Using techniques he'd learned from Apache raiders and Confederate guerrillas, we created the illusion of a fully occupied canyon while actually leaving only 20 volunteers behind. When dawn broke on the 4th day, the colonel ordered his attack. The 20 volunteers, led by Jack, Samuel, and me, held them off for 6 hours using prepared positions and carefully rationed ammunition to make it seem like the full force was still present. Then when the army finally breached the caves, they found them empty except for a message Jack had left. "Colonel Martinez, by the time you read this, 800 people you sought to imprison are free. Your Apache scouts have been reunited with families they thought they'd never see again. Your supply depot at Fort Buchanan has been relieved of its excess weapons, and the trading post you destroyed was empty of everything valuable. War is not just about strength, but about intelligence. Today you were outsmarted by the very people you considered savage. Respectfully, the Covenant." The explosion that followed, our last dynamite destroying the remaining structures so they couldn't be used as an army outpost, could be heard for miles. We regrouped in the mountains, our numbers swollen by Apache who'd escaped the reservation, Mexicans fleeing conscription Chinese workers, and even some white families who refused the Army's demand to choose sides. "We can't run forever," Samuel said that night as we planned our next move. "We don't have to," Jack replied. "We just have to run until November." "What happens in November?" I asked. "Elections. New administration, new policies. The railroad companies are already complaining about the disruption to their workforce. Territorial governors are worried about the economy collapsing without Apache trade. This war is expensive, and America is getting tired of expensive wars." "You're gambling everything on politics," Samuel challenged. "I'm gambling everything on time," Jack corrected. "Every day we survive, we prove that their way doesn't work. Every family that stays together, every child that grows up free, every moment of peace we create in the middle of their war, it all matters." As if to underscore his point, Miguel appeared with the other children. They'd been practicing a song Isabella had taught them, a mixture of Apache Spanish and English words that told the story of our resistance. "We wanted to sing it for everyone," Miguel said, "to remind them why we fight." As their young voices rose in the darkness, I saw hardened warriors cry. These children born from different peoples, but raised as one family, were the future we were fighting for. "You asked me once if I thought our way of life would survive," I said to Jack. "Listening to them, I know it will. Even if we don't, especially if we don't, martyrs are remembered, but children who grow up free, they change the world." The Army found us again 2 weeks later, But by then, we had become something they couldn't defeat. Not a place, but an idea. Not a tribe, but a movement. The Covenant had grown to over 1,000 souls, and more joined every day. The final battle was coming. We all knew it. The army couldn't afford to let us exist, and we couldn't run forever. But we had something they didn't expect. Unity born from diversity, strength drawn from supposed weakness, and the unbreakable will of people fighting not for conquest, but for the right to exist as they chose. As I looked out at our camp, Apache teaching whites to track Mexicans sharing food with Chinese children of all colors playing together, I knew that even if the army destroyed us tomorrow, we had already won something precious. We had proved that the divisions between peoples were illusions, that love could bridge any gap, that family was about choice, not blood. The white eagle from my vision had indeed fallen, but from its broken body something unprecedented had risen. Not Apache or American, not Mexican or Chinese, but something entirely new, something worth dying for, something worth living for. The storm was coming. We would meet it as one people, with one voice, with one unbreakable will to survive. The letter that changed everything arrived on a hawk's wings. Literally, Samuel's trained bird landed in our mountain camp, carrying a message that made Jack's hands tremble as he read it. "It's from General Crook," he said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "He wants to meet, alone. No soldiers, no weapons. Just talk." "It's a trap," Marcus said immediately. "Of course it's a trap," Samuel agreed. "The question is whether it's a trap worth walking into." General George Crook was known among the Apache as Gray Wolf, a warrior who kept his word even to enemies. If he said he wanted to talk, he meant it. But talking and offering acceptable terms were different things entirely. "I'll go," Jack said. "We'll go," I corrected. He asked for the leaders of the Covenant. "That's both of us." "All three of us," Samuel added, surprising everyone. "The Covenant has Apache white, and those between. All voices should be present." 3 days later, we met Crook at Sulphur Springs, a neutral ground sacred to no one, and therefore safe for all. He came with only an aide as promised. We came ready for either peace or war. Crook was older than I expected, his famous beard now more white than gray. His eyes, though, were sharp as obsidian, taking in every detail of our appearance. "Jack Brennan," he said, extending his hand. "I arrested you once 10 years ago in Kansas. You were stealing horses from the army." "I was stealing them back," Jack corrected, shaking the offered hand. "They were Apache ponies you'd confiscated from peaceful bands." "So you were. Even then you had interesting loyalties." Crook turned to me. "Ayanna, your medicine skills are legendary. The soldiers you've treated speak highly of your mercy." "Wounded men are just wounded men," I replied. "Their uniforms matter less than their suffering." "And Shadow Hawk," Crook faced Samuel, "the ghost who strikes and vanishes. Your tactical mind would be valuable to any army." "My tactical mind serves my people," Samuel responded coldly. Crook nodded, then gestured for us to sit. "I'm not here to threaten or negotiate surrender. I'm here because Washington has finally realized what I've known for years. This war is unwinnable." We exchanged glances but remained silent. Every band we force onto reservations costs more to maintain than letting them roam free. Every settlement we burn creates 10 new enemies. Every Apache scout who helps us loses family trust forever. He pulled out a map, spreading it on the ground. "You've created something unprecedented, a coalition that transcends race, culture, even nationality. The Covenant has become a symbol." "Symbols can be destroyed," Jack pointed out, "but ideas can't. And the idea that different peoples can unite against injustice, that's spreading faster than Washington can contain it. There are Covenant sympathizers in Santa Fe, Tucson, even San Francisco. Newspapers are calling you heroes. Politicians facing election are questioning the war's purpose." "What are you offering?" Samuel asked bluntly. Crook pulled out a document. Autonomy. This valley, these mountains, 20,000 acres total, recognized as covenant territory. Self-governance under territorial law. No forced removal, no reservation system. In exchange, the covenant agrees to peace, allows railroad passage through specific corridors, and maintains order among its members. The offer was more than we'd dreamed possible, but I knew there had to be a catch. What about those already on reservations? I asked. Any Apache who chooses to join the covenant may leave, but Crook held up his hand. They forfeit government rations and protection. This is about choosing freedom with responsibility over dependence with security. And the army posts remain where they are, but no interference unless crimes are committed against non-covenant citizens. You police yourselves. Jack studied the document. This seems too good. What's the real price? Crook's expression hardened slightly. The real price is success. If the covenant fails, if you can't maintain peace among such diverse peoples, if violence erupts from your territory, the offer is void. The army returns, and this time, no mercy. Your betting will fail, Samuel said. I'm betting you'll succeed, Crook countered, because if you do it, solves problems across the entire territory. Every displaced people, every refugee from violence, every person who doesn't fit the neat categories of civilization, they become your responsibility, not the army's. You're dumping your problems on us, I realized. I'm giving you the chance to prove your way works. Isn't that what you wanted? We asked for 3 days to consider. Crook agreed, warning us that Washington's patience was measured in weeks, not months. The debate that followed nearly tore the covenant apart. Some saw it as victory, recognition, land freedom. Others saw it as a trap, being forced to become what we'd fought against, a controlled reservation with a different name. They're giving us a prison and calling it paradise. One Apache chief argued. They're giving us a chance to build something real, Isabella countered. A place where our children can grow up without fear. Until we fail to meet their standards, and they destroy us anyway, Marcus pointed out. Jack had been silent through most of the debate. When he finally spoke, everyone listened. They're afraid, he said simply. For the first time in the history of this territory, the government is afraid, not of Apache warriors or Mexican rebels or Chinese unions. They're afraid of unity, of people choosing cooperation over conflict. So, Samuel challenged. So, we use their fear. We take their offer, but we transform it into something they never imagined. Not a reservation or a territory, but a beacon, a living proof that their entire system of division and conquest is obsolete. And when they come to destroy that beacon, I asked, then we'll be strong enough to stop them, because we won't be alone. Every person in the territory who dreams of something better will be watching us, supporting us, joining us. The vote was close. 437 for acceptance, 389 against. But it was enough. When we returned to Crook with our answer, Jack added conditions that made the general's aide gasp. We want the right to trade freely without government interference, the right to educate our children in all languages and traditions, the right to marry across racial lines without persecution, and the right to offer sanctuary to anyone fleeing violence regardless of origin. You're asking for things most states don't allow, Crook said carefully. We're not asking to be a state. We're asking to be something new. Crook studied us for a long moment. You realize if you succeed, you'll change everything. The entire concept of how different peoples can coexist. Yes, I said simply. That's the point. He signed the agreement. We signed after him. And with those signatures, the covenant territory was born. The transformation began immediately. Within a month, our mountain camp became a town, not planned, not organized by any government, but growing organically as people arrived seeking the freedom we offered. Chen designed an irrigation system that combined Chinese techniques with Apache knowledge of desert water. Isabella established a school where children learned in 4 languages, Rosa's trading post became a market where Apache pottery sat beside Mexican silver and Chinese silk, but it was Jack's transformation that amazed me most. The broken bounty hunter I'd found dying in the desert became a leader who settled disputes with wisdom instead of weapons. He learned Apache well enough to joke in it, Spanish well enough to sing in it, and even picked up some Chinese from Chen. "You've changed," I told him one evening as we watched the sunset from our newly built home, a structure that combined Apache Mexican and American architectural styles. "We all have," he replied, pulling me close. "That's what survival does. It changes you, or it kills you." "And us?" I asked. "Have we changed? From what enemies to lovers, strangers to family broken to healing?" He kissed my forehead. "Yes, Ayana, we've changed. We've become possible." Our wedding took place on the autumn equinox, a ceremony that embodied everything the covenant represented. Samuel performed the Apache rituals Hans, the German settler, read, Christian verses Chen offered Buddhist blessings, and Isabella sang Mexican wedding songs. Miguel stood as our witness, this boy who'd lost everything and found a new family now watching as that family formalized its bonds. When Jack placed the ring on my finger, the same carved stone he'd offered months ago, Miguel whispered loud enough for all to hear, "Now it's official. We're really family." The crowd laughed, but he was right. Not just Jack and I, but all of us. The 1,000 souls who'd chosen to build something unprecedented in the desert. General Crook visited 6 months later ostensibly to check our progress, but really, I think out of curiosity. He found a functioning town with elected leaders from all ethnic groups, a militia that included Apache warriors and former Army soldiers, a hospital where I taught medicine to students of all backgrounds, and a main street where the impossible had become routine. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted to Jack. Whites and Apache conducting business as equals, Mexican and Chinese families intermarrying. Children who speak 4 languages and see no strangeness in it. "It's not perfect," Jack replied. "We have disputes, conflicts, old prejudices that surface, but we deal with them through law, not violence, through conversation, not segregation. And it works." "Look around you, General. Does it look like it works?" Crook watched Miguel teaching a group of younger children, Apache, white, Mexican, Chinese, how to track rabbits using techniques from all their cultures. "That boy," Crook said, "he's the future, isn't he? Not Apache or Mexican, but something new." "They all are," I said, joining them. "The first generation born free of the old hatreds. You realize the territory will never fully accept this. There will always be those who see you as a threat. Then we'll always be ready to defend ourselves," Samuel said, appearing with his patrol. "But defense and aggression are different things, General. We've chosen defense." Before Crook left, he pulled me aside. "That vision you had about the White Eagle, did it ever make sense?" I looked at Jack teaching a mixed group of young men how to build with adobe, his pale skin bronzed by sun, his American features softened by Apache clothing. "The White Eagle didn't bring destruction or protection," I told Crook. "It brought transformation. It died as one thing and was reborn as another." "And you? What were you reborn as?" I thought about it, then smiled. "A bridge between worlds that were never as separate as we believed." That night, as the Covenant territory celebrated the spring planting with a festival that mixed traditions from 5 continents, I stood with Jack on the hill overlooking it all. "We did it," he said, wonder in his voice. "We actually did it. We started it," I corrected. "Our children will finish it." As if summoned by my words, Miguel ran up breathless with excitement. "Mama, Ayana, Papa, Jack, Isabella says to tell you, the baby's coming." We ran down to help deliver the newest citizen of the Covenant territory, a girl whose mother was Apache, whose father was Chinese, who would grow up in a world where such things were not strange, but beautiful. As I held that infant, her unfocused eyes containing infinite possibility, I knew that everything we'd suffered, everything we'd sacrificed, had been worth it. We had planted seeds in the desert. Against all odds, against all prediction, they had taken root. The Covenant territory wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And in its success, the old world's certainties crumbled, making space for something unprecedented, a future where difference was strength, where unity was choice, and where love could grow in any soil between any peoples, if given the chance to try. 5 years had passed since the Covenant territory was recognized, and the impossible had become commonplace. The wedding we held that morning would have started wars a decade ago. Chen's daughter marrying Samuel's son with Jack, officiating in 3 languages, and me blessing them with Apache prayers and Chinese tea ceremony. Who would have thought, Samuel said, standing beside me as the young couple exchanged vows, that I would see my son marry with joy instead of duty? Who would have thought you'd accept a Chinese daughter-in-law? I teased gently. She makes him laugh. Samuel replied simply, after everything we've survived, laughter matters more than blood. The ceremony took place in the center of New Haven, the name our town had earned through vote. 5,000 people now called it home, drawn by the promise of freedom from the old prejudices. The main street bustled with businesses that shouldn't exist. The Apache German bakery, the Mexican-Chinese medical clinic, the trading post run by former Army soldiers and Apache warriors together. Jack found me after the ceremony, his hair now more silver than brown, his face carved with lines that spoke of leadership rather than suffering. The territorial governor's here, he said quietly. Wants to speak with the council. The Council of Seven had replaced our informal leadership 2 years prior, representatives from each major group elected annually, with Jack serving as mediator and me as keeper of laws. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair, which mattered more. Governor Wallace waited in the council chamber, a round building designed so no seat held more importance than another. He was younger than expected, with the eager eyes of a reformer. I've come with a proposition, he began without preamble. The territory is preparing for statehood. The question of what happens to the Covenant territory needs to be addressed. We continue as we are, Samuel said firmly. The agreement with General Crook was made with the federal government, not a future state. Wallace interrupted. State law could override it unless... He paused dramatically. Unless the Covenant territory becomes something else first. What are you suggesting? Jack asked, though I could see he already suspected. County status. Official recognition as Covenant County, with your council becoming a legally recognized government. Your laws regarding intermarriage, multilingual education, and religious freedom would be protected under county charter. In exchange for, I prompted, knowing there had to be a cost. Taxation. Voting participation, and most importantly, your militia becomes a recognized peacekeeping force available to help with territorial disputes. It was both opportunity and trap. Acceptance meant becoming part of the system we'd fled. Refusal meant risking everything when statehood came. We need to discuss this, Jack said diplomatically. Of course, but decide quickly. Statehood votes begin in 3 months. That evening, we held the largest gathering in the Covenant's history. Every adult had a voice, every opinion was heard. The debate raged past midnight with passionate arguments on all sides. Miguel, now 18 and elected to speak for the youth, stood with confidence his childhood self could never have imagined. We are the generation between, he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. Not fully Apache or Mexican or white or Chinese, but all of these and none of these. The old world has no place for us, but this new world we're building, we are its natural citizens. I say we take the county status not to join their system, but to transform it from within. The boy speaks wisdom. Chen said, his hair now white as snow. In my homeland, we say, the reed that bends survives the storm. We can bend without breaking. Isabella, who'd become our school superintendent, added, "Our children deserve recognition for their education. County status means our diplomas are valid anywhere. Our young people can attend universities, become lawyers and doctors who understand both worlds." But it was Rosa, ancient now, but still sharp, who provided the deciding argument. "I've lived through 3 governments, 4 wars, and countless promises broken. But I've never seen what we have here, people choosing to be family. If becoming a county protects that, then we become a county. Names change, papers get signed, but what we are in our hearts, that's ours to keep or lose." The vote was overwhelming. 3,847 for county status, 743 against. On November 15, 1887, Covenant County was officially established. The signing ceremony became a festival that lasted 3 days. Reporters from Eastern newspapers came expecting to find oddity and scandal. Instead, they found Miguel teaching mixed-race children to paint in Chinese watercolor style, Apache women and white men running businesses together, and former enemies sharing meals as family. One reporter from the New York Times asked me, "How did you accomplish this? How did you unite peoples who've been killing each other for generations?" "We didn't unite peoples," I corrected. "We united people, one at a time, one family at a time, one shared meal, and helped neighbor at a time." The hatred between races is real, but it's taught. Love between individuals is also real, and it can be learned. But surely there were moments when it almost fell apart. I looked at Jack, remembering him dying in the desert, remembering Tom Morrison's gun, remembering the Army's cannons. Every day almost fell apart, but every morning we chose to try again. That's all civilization is, people choosing to try again. The reporter turned to Jack. "And you, Mr. Brennan, from bounty hunter to county administrator. That's quite a transformation." Jack smiled, the expression softening his weathered features. "I was a man who lost everything to hatred and became hatred himself. Then I met people who'd lost just as much, but chose differently. They taught me that you can't bring back the dead by creating more dead. You honor them by living better." That's quite philosophical for a former gunman. Every gunman is a philosopher, sir. We just usually philosophize about the wrong things. That night, as the festival continued around us, Jack and I walked to the cemetery we'd established on the hill. It held Apache and white Mexican and Chinese, all equal in death, as we tried to make them in life. We stopped at a new stone, Tom Morrison's. We'd had his body brought from where he died, giving him the burial his hatred hadn't earned, but our principles demanded. "Any regrets?" I asked Jack. "Every day, but not about killing him. About taking so long to become someone who didn't need to. And us, any regrets about us?" He pulled me close, this man who'd been my prisoner, my patient, my partner, and now my husband. Only that we didn't have more time, that I didn't find you sooner. Or perhaps we found each other exactly when we needed to. Sooner, and we might have been too broken to build. Later, and we might have been too hardened to change. Miguel found us there, bringing his new wife, a girl whose grandfather had been a Confederate soldier and whose grandmother had been a freed slave. Another impossible union made possible by the world we'd built. "The council wants you to give the closing blessing," he told me. "Both of you." Standing before the assembled thousands, I felt the weight of what we'd created. Not perfection, we still had disputes, prejudices that surfaced, old wounds that ached. But we had something more valuable than perfection proof that change was possible. Jack spoke first. 5 years ago, I was dying in the desert, convinced that the world held nothing but pain and division. Today, I stand before you as proof that men can change, that enemies can become brothers, that love can grow in any soil if given the chance. I continued, "The Apache say that all people emerged from the same earth, separated only by the stories they tell themselves. Tonight, we tell a new story. Not Apache or American, not Mexican or Chinese, but human, simply beautifully, impossibly human. We name this place Covenant County not for the agreement we signed, Jack added, but for the promise we make to each other daily, to see beyond color, to character beyond tradition, to truth beyond fear, to family. The crowd erupted in celebration, drums and guitars, fiddles and flutes, languages mixing into a joyful noise that seemed to shake the stars themselves. Later, as Jack and I lay in our bed, listening to the distant music of our impossible town, he asked, "Do you think it will last? This thing we've built?" "Nothing lasts forever," I replied. "But ideas, they spread like seeds on the wind. Every child who grows up here carries the possibility of a different world. Every family that forms across old boundaries proves that love is stronger than law." "The White Eagle," Jack murmured half asleep. "It really did transform." "We all did," I whispered. "We all did." As dawn approached, bringing the first light to Covenant County, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, from a dying bounty hunter and a grieving medicine woman to the founders of something unprecedented, from enemies to lovers, from broken individuals to builders of a new world. The old territory was dying, killed by its own rigid divisions. But here, in our small corner of the desert, something new was being born. Not perfect, never perfect, but possible. Always possible. And that perhaps was the greatest message of all that human beings, given the chance to choose love over fear, unity over division, hope over hatred, would often surprise themselves by choosing well. The Covenant territory was proof that the future didn't have to repeat the past, that people could write new stories, that the impossible was just another word for something not yet tried. As I drifted toward sleep in the arms of a man who should have been my enemy, but became my salvation, I whispered a prayer to all the gods, Apache, Christian, Buddhist, and unnamed, thanking them for the vision of the White Eagle, for showing me that sometimes the greatest transformations come disguised as endings, and the most powerful love stories begin with the decision to see an enemy as human. The sun rose over Covenant County, painting the desert gold and red, illuminating a place where the impossible had become everyday reality. And in that light, 5,000 souls continued the greatest experiment of all, learning to live together, to love together, to build together a future that no one had imagined but everyone now shared. The White Eagle had landed. Its transformation was complete, and from its reborn wings, a new world was learning to fly.